Well, I'm drinking alcohol, but it's not ethanol. I'm preparing for a procedure tomorrow, so I'm going to be drinking polyethylene glycol every 10 minutes.
Oh my God. Are you going to make it through the podcast without having a situation? Are you hearing yourself speak? We've had 18 casualties in a war that's lasted 3 months. And you're talking about a draft. I don't mean to interrupt. I just pulled up the news and it says the Ayatollah has fled Iran.
Welcome to Bourbon and Rum, the podcast dedicated to civil conversation. I'm Kent, I like rum, and I'm from the left side of the aisle.
And I'm Kyle, I like bourbon. I tend to be a little more conservative. We're brothers talking politics over bourbon and rum.
What are you drinking?
I'm drinking South Downs natural mineral water still. I'm in England and not drinking tonight. What are you drinking on?
Well, I'm drinking alcohol, but it's not ethanol. I'm preparing for a procedure tomorrow, so I'm going to be drinking of polyethylene glycol every 10 minutes.
Oh my God. Are you going to make it through the podcast without having a situation?
Well, if I don't, it will make for interesting listening.
Yeah, that could be a new frontier for the podcast. Yeah, John, I don't think we've had one of us on the toilet yet.
I mean, we've both been full of shit from time to time.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for joining from over the pond. How are things in the UK right now?
It's good. I'm here for a trade show, but I'm in this room. I'm going to show you this room. Let me see if I can change my camera here. So there's the door. There's the bed. There's the wall. And then the bed behind us, and then there's the bathroom. So I think it's all of maybe, I had to guess, it's maybe 150 square feet.
Yeah, like 12 by 12, something like that. Looks like the bathroom's almost as big as the room.
Yeah, the shower's the biggest part of the room. It's quite nice in the shower. But
I mean, maybe pull your blankets in there.
But I think it's like, for this week, I think it's $700 a night. So,
Oof.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't buy you much here.
No.
It's crazy the wealth here. Yesterday I went walking down. So I'm staying near, Hyde Park, or near Hyde Park, and what they call Knightsbridge, Kensington area, kind of south of Hyde Park. And then I walked over to the Mayfair district, which is near Hyde Park. And I mean, the cars everywhere. You walk on one street corner, it's a Rolls Royce dealership, then Bentley, then Lamborghini, then Ferrari, then Aston Martin, then Bugatti. It's just, there is a lot of big money here in London, that's for sure. I was telling my wife, I said, this place would be a lot more fun to experience if you had a couple $100 million to burn.
Well, I think I've never been to London, but I think probably similar to New York or LA, it's got its own rich people, but it's also a magnet. If you're a dictator of a African nation,
Yeah.
you probably got a place in London, and so you've got all these, kind of ridiculous wealth from elsewhere in the world that sort of aggregates there too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in Texas, you see the fancy sports cars and stuff, but I find it wild when you see some, apartment, they're like nice apartments, and there's a Lamborghini or Ferrari sitting out front, and it's got dirt all over it. And like, that's their everyday, transportation.
The daily driver.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what news you're getting or what you're seeing. Anything catch your attention in the news feed this week?
Well, there was a lot of sporting news with the World Cup.
Definitely.
We had a little get together with some people from England on Wednesday. They were pretty disappointed to lose, but then they blew out well, they started to blow out France yesterday, and then I guess the main event is starting here in a minute.
Yeah. Did you wear your Argentina jersey?
No, it was my boss, so I was sucking up. I had a England hat on and was trying to find. I was going to order some English food, but nothing against the English, but the food. People complain about the food, but what's worse than English food is English food in Texas that's warmed up. That's even worse. So.
Well, the ongoing saga of the Iran war seems to be morphing. I wonder if you've read much about that and if you've got opinions.
Yeah, I was very close to the Iranian embassy here a few minutes ago. I was thinking of that. Now that would have been that would have been something to broadcast a podcast from the steps of the. That may not be wise.
I mean, maybe you could have knocked on the door and seen if there had been somebody that would have joined us.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, can I get your opinion, please?
We have a podcast. We're heard nationwide in the United States.
That's right.
This is your chance to speak to the American people.
I did have a conversation with the Uber driver earlier tonight on the way to dinner, and got to talking to him. And he's from Iran. He moved here about 9 years ago. His parents moved after, I think, about the time of the revolution back in the late 70s. And we didn't talk a long time about it, but we did speak about, kind of what we had talked about. I think we talked about a podcast long ago about, the revolution initially had all these lofty ideals. They were going to put a cleric in there, and they were going to, they weren't going to be focused with money and, fame, and, like they were going to, there was this, certainly a faction that thought, instead of having some aristocrat running the country, you're going to have this man of the people who's a faith leader. And then, what's come to pass is a totalitarian dictatorship, and the guy in charge is loaded. He's not, some man of the people anymore. But, he brought up a good point that, and we've talked about this before, the sanctions don't really, they really just affect the people. I mean, they're not really affecting the rulers, because the rulers will get their money elsewhere. And like he talked about 9 years ago, he had a import-export business. And he said, but after all the sanctions, it's like you can't keep the doors open. And there's, actually made me laugh a little bit when he said import-export. I thought of George Costanza, but yeah. Like, wait, is that, what was the name of the company?
Vandalay Industries.
Yeah. Was it called Vandalay Industries by chance? But so, in keeping with that, like, we've talked about that too. The bombings may or may not impact the ruling party. I think the biggest thing is if you could cut off the finances. I mean, that seems like the only real surefire way to hit them where it counts.
Well, I noticed. I agree. If you could affect the spending ability of the regime, I noticed the article that during the ceasefire they got $4 billion worth of oil through the straits and out onto the market.
Yeah.
I'm resisting the temptation to just be a whiner and complaining, but I do wonder, like, how do you approach that? There was an escalation, if I heard, I didn't read super close, so I could be wrong on this, but they targeted some more civilian type targets this most recent time, some bridges that are gonna make it really hard for people to get around in some places. I don't know, but you wonder, does that increase pressure on the regime? Well, maybe, but a lot less if it's a regime that doesn't give a crap about what its people thinks. Obviously at some point, the villagers with the pitchforks, but pitchforks versus, missiles is not a good, that's not a good matchup.
Yeah, yeah. I think there probably is a fine line in some cases between what's military and civilian infrastructure. People take out bridges because they don't want the military to move assets or whatever. So there's probably some strategic value there. But certainly,
sure.
I think the biggest thing is you don't want to create a situation where instead of convincing the people to overthrow the government, they become, defensive of the government instead of the invaders. But that said, I did see a poll. Our producer, I'll have to figure out if I can find the reference, but it was a poll taken inside Iran. I don't know how they did it, that talked to, how many people want a new government. And it turned out to be a pretty overwhelming majority, which was really, in the poll, it was shocking, they said, because, typically a lot of people that are, doing a poll in the country are not going to say something negative about the government for obvious reasons. But it was, based on that, it was even considered even much higher. The fact that many people are like, no, we need to get these guys out. But then it's like, well, are they going to do anything about it? They may want them out, but are they going to be able to impact that?
Well, and I don't know. It sounds good on TV. We have no issue with the people of Iran, but kind of we do. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I think that sounds like a nice rhetorical position, but I don't think it holds up. This looks, I don't know. Trump mentioned sending in U.S. troops this week, and then a couple of our troops got killed at a base. Do you think? Let me think of how to frame this question. You hit pretty hard on the description of German youth where they were like, we're not going to fight for stuff. Yeah. Do you think American youth are, I mean, if can we do this with our all-volunteer force? Do we need to go to a draft? I mean, what would it require?
Are you hearing yourself speak? We've had 18 casualties in a war that's lasted 3 months. You're talking about a draft?
No. I'm just saying if we were to escalate, if you're going with ground, I mean, I don't know what he means by ground troops. If you're talking about seizing Karg Island, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But it's a really huge country. If you're going to do anything, like it could take a lot of manpower, could it not?
Yeah. I don't see a future where we're trying to go occupy. I mean, I could see taking out, like Karg Island would make some sense.
Yeah.
It's a strategic target. And some of these, honestly, if you could, nail down some of these islands in the Strait of Hormuz, you may be able, because honestly, if you could, if you can enact a blockade and you could secure the Strait of the Hormuz, it's kind of like they don't really have, much going for them. I mean,
right.
I think you could make that work longer term. I think it's just I was watching reading one of the articles about it, and part of the problem is we've taken out so many of their people. It's like I don't know if anybody is really speaking for the regime. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges to the whole negotiation process. There probably are people that legitimately want. I mean, I believe there probably are people that want a peaceful solution out of this in Iran, but they're not. They don't have control of the country.
Right.
I think that's the biggest challenge, because it's like you can keep degrading the military and you can keep taking out leaders, but like at some point somebody's got to be in charge enough to be able to say, okay, let's sign the peace treaty.
Is that part of the rationale for leaving the regime in place in Venezuela? I mean, because that's a legitimate thing, right? You take out all of the leadership. Who's going to sign the sign the instrument of surrender?
Right. Yeah. I mean, somehow I mean, it seems like you almost need a insurgent new government and then somehow impact and overthrow and take over. But like, that's not a simple transaction. I mean, and I think that was a little bit different with Venezuela. Like, I mean, you take out the strong man. I don't know that they're any less corrupt than they were, but they're dealing with us now in a different way.
Right.
Clearly.
Well, seriously, I wasn't like trying to just throw shit. I wasn't just being snarky about Venezuela, but in some ways you need somebody to deal with, somebody that has at least some of the levers of government.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. But it is it now plots people in different places. Some people, okay, well, you can't ever trust any of these people, so never negotiate. Let's just keep bombing. Well, that's one angle, but that's a pretty long-term angle. There's another angle. I mean, I think where the Democrats in some cases are taking it to as well. Trump entered this. He doesn't have a plan. It's a mess. It's a debacle. And okay, even if you agreed with that, then it's like, what's your position? Like, what's the way out?
Right.
So it is kind of I don't feel like any of the talking heads, government included, necessarily know the playbook of how this ends.
Yeah. I think it's tacky to try to use this as something to beat on Trump with. I will say that, I don't like him. I don't think he's a good leader. I think it was a bad idea, and I think it's going to be a lot harder to get this done than he thought it was. But I don't wish for setbacks for the United States' interest in order to punctuate my point. I hope that we can get to something resolution pretty quick.
I also think, though, that a lot of the people that are saying, well, this is a bad idea, he never should have entered, were a lot of the same people a year or two ago saying you got to do something about this threat. And so it's kind of like, it's back to everybody knows it's a problem and something needs to be done about it. I don't feel like there's anybody that's laid out hey, this is the best plan.
No, I agree, but you just when you said that, you combined two statements. I think it was a bad idea, and
well, I'm saying the people that are saying,
yeah,
the people are saying, well, it was a bad idea and we shouldn't have gone in. Many of those same people a year ago were like, well, Trump's got to do something about Iran. And it's like, well, this is the wrong choice. But then it's like, well, which is the right choice? I don't know.
I agree. I'm just saying, I don't think that, I think what I was trying to tease out is it's possible that, yeah, it was the right thing to do to move on Iran at the time that we did. But I can still wish we'd have had maybe what felt to me like a more cogent strategy going in. In other words, it's a little false choice to say you're either all in or you're just throwing stones. I don't know.
That's totally fair, and I wouldn't argue with that. The part I would argue is people saying Iran, why would you go there?
Right.
Well, it's not exactly like a shocker.
Where did this come from? Where did this pop up on us?
Right.
I also think that, just for Americans, we hit this early on in the conflict. I can't remember what we came up with, but, this is a country of 100 million people. It's probably double or triple the size of Iraq. It probably, if you laid Iran on the United States, it would probably stretch from California to Texas. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's big. This is not
right.
This is not Venezuela. This is not Grenada. I mean, this is not a small thing. It's one of the most significant countries on the planet. In a top 20 kind of way, and you don't just wave this off with your hand.
Yeah. I mean, talking to the taxi driver, though, or the Uber driver, it does seem like there's so many of these places that it's a shame it's so screwed up, because it would be a really cool place to see, And he was talking about what, some of the wonderful places to go see. And I was like, I would love to go to a place like that, or a place like Afghanistan, like some of these amazing sites that, nobody will ever see because they're so screwed up. Yeah, there's so many places like that would be great to go see. And I do believe that, I say this, but then it's like these leaders in Iran, it's like, they, on the surface, they're saying, well, we're this Islamic republic and we're, hardcore in what they believe, and that's why they're doing this. Yet, the reality is these people are all like billionaires. But then it's like, is money a motivator?
Apparently.
Well, but then it's like, okay, but if money is a motivator, if they opened up their country, they could be worth 10 times as much.
Yeah.
It's just and I don't know. I think some of it is just this desire for power. It's like.
Well, you see that in this country. We just in the last week we had the passing of Lindsey Graham, but the very questionable photograph of Mitch McConnell and the 20-minute conversations with him. And, again, I don't wish any ill towards Senator McConnell, but at some point you've been senator for X number of years. You've made tens of millions of dollars on your stock trades and your under the table payments. Like, do you not want to go to a beach somewhere? Like, I don't understand that. But it is apparently intoxicating. That's what we ought to do. We ought to set up a dictator retirement program. Pick a really nice place with a beach.
That's supposedly kind of what Trump was offering to Kim Jong-un, was like, hey, we'll make you super rich and happy and go someplace else. But then, they wouldn't have the intoxicating power.
Right.
You can drive a Ferrari around London, but you're not going to be having millions of minions working for you.
You ever read about the King of Thailand?
No.
So he's this dude. His father was beloved. He's kind of not as beloved, but it's an inherited monarchy. He lives in Bavaria. He owns like a hotel in Bavaria, and his retinue stays there. And it's like a big deal when he occasionally visits the country of Thailand.
Wow. That's nuts. Well, it's like, the guys that run the UAE, they're worth billions, and they're essentially dictators, and they seem to like it, So what is it about being a totalitarian asshole that's more fun than, being a benevolent dictator?
Could it be self-preservation?
Yeah.
You could be richer if you open things up in Iran, but you would have other people that would control some of that capital and some of that money, and then they would have the ability to buy an army and come after you or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not so much, there's a let me state this right. There's a principle in economics that people have found pretty well, and it turns out pretty true, that most people would rather have rather have less total money but more money than average, rather than more money but you're at the average point in your society. In other words, you would rather have a salary of 100 grand when everybody else is at 50 than having 120 grand and everybody's at 120.
Yeah, makes sense.
And maybe that's part of what's going on with the dictators. You would rather be on top of a poor nation than in the middle of the pack in a rich nation.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm that way. I really don't.
Did you see, speaking of Lindsey Graham, he passed away and he was worth 1.5 million, including his home. So he didn't get the memo apparently on.
Right. I mean, we've got an investing club at work of people that are all in the market. Would you love to be in the investing club that Nancy Pelosi was the chair of?
No, yeah, apparently, she didn't pass on any tips to Lindsay, surprisingly, not surprisingly.
What's your read on the election speech the other night? Did you watch it?
Oh, I don't mean to interrupt because I thought, I haven't really paid much attention to other news other than that. I just pulled up the news and it says the Ayatollah has fled Iran.
Oh, wow. Like breaking news, huh?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Maybe he's coming to Trump's beach retirement for dictators in Cuba.
He's going to go to South America with Jim Morrison and Elvis.
Well, that's promising. Hopefully that means something's afoot. That would be great.
Yeah. Interesting.
Now, this election thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic.
Well, apparently Trump released a bunch of documents. First of all, most of them were old, that had already been hashed out. And he released one document that he said, this is proof that there's election fraud. But the document that he released, like the preface to the document, says, it's true we found a couple of instances of fraud, but there was nothing on the scale that would have affected the election. And, this is his proof point that it's all, I don't know, man. Why can this guy not handle that he lost that election?
Well, I mean, I guess, I think the purpose of the speech wasn't so much about the 2020 election as it was the Save America Act, which is interesting to me that is getting as much resistance as it is. I mean,
because it's a bad idea
to ask for IDs to vote.
It's not the asking for ID to vote that's the problem. I'm not opposed to asking for ID to vote. It's the fact that you have to, quote, prove your citizenship to register in the first place, which means at a minimum, you've got to get a passport and, I don't know.
Or a birth certificate.
Yeah, which is not always easy to get, and it costs money. It looks to me like it's a solution to a problem that isn't a real problem.
Well, I think most people, I think the polls show that most people think having an ID to vote is an appropriate thing. But, I think there's 13 states that don't require any form of ID to vote. And, the mail-in votes also, I think, are highly questionable, where, it's one thing if you're doing an absentee ballot because you're traveling or you're on business, but...
So wait a minute on that. Our beloved parents, my dad before he died, and our mother were card-carrying Republicans, and they vote absentee or by mail. That's okay. But if somebody else is busy, that's not good. That doesn't count. That seems like nonsense.
And I just think there's a lot of opening for fraud, and I think having some controls makes sense. I mean, I've said all along, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I mean, in today's technology, there's a lot of ways to make a much more secure voting process than, 1970s technologies with little pieces of paper. But I don't think anybody really wants to fix it. Nobody really wants to make it more secure because I think it's a political football that is beneficial to both sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, how are we not in a place where, with the technology that we have today, that it is a more secure voting system?
I agree. We should be able to do that, but we are farther than than we've ever been. And one of the primary reasons that will never happen is because Trump has deliberately sowed doubt about elections.
Yeah, like when Hillary Clinton, I see the reels on my feed all the time. You don't see the reels, but of 2016, Trump's not a legitimate president. There were all kinds of problems with the election. I mean, there are dozens of Democrats that when he got voted the first time, well, the Russians have brought him in. It was all Russian collusion. That's why he got elected. He was illegitimate from the beginning. I honestly think I've said before, I think it's a political football for everybody to keep throwing around. Well, there's this suspicion or this issue, and you can't say there's zero fraud. Whether it was enough to overturn, say, the 2020 election, I agree with you. I think I'm not espousing that, but I think there is significant amounts of fraud, and there's a lot of openings for fraud, and nobody wants to do anything about it. I think most people want things to be done about it, but nobody will take that up.
Yeah, I don't know. I believe you about the reels. I don't think I ever said that I thought that the 2016 election was not legitimate.
No, you're not the problem. I mean, the political sphere, that is the go-to, and that's not something Trump started.
Yeah. I mean, but ask the people at Dominion Voting Systems who the problem is. It's between Trump and the MyPillow guy. They won a pretty big lawsuit, and I don't know. I agree. I think we could do like 1,000 times better than we have. We could have an app. We could have a nationwide app.
Of all the, I haven't done a full inventory, but there was a lot of these post 2020 cases that, there have been lawsuits, but there's also been cases that were thrown out, not on the merits of the cases, but thrown out because some court said they didn't have jurisdiction to look at something. I don't think I don't think you are one to say that we don't have election fraud.
No.
There is election fraud of some level. It's just a question of how much.
And it's demonstrably and obviously at a level below that, which is significant in affecting the elections.
And you know that because
I trust the FBI. Where they did the math, and what did they find? Like 500 votes improperly cast in like 3 consecutive elections.
Nationally?
Yeah.
I'd like to see that report, but I mean, I don't know. I just think there's a lot of. I guess it's interesting to me that it's such a partisan issue. It seems like election security ought to be it's partisan because Trump has made a big deal out of it. But again, Democrats made a big deal out of it before. I don't know. It seems.
It just seems weird to me. I'm picking
how politically convenient it is.
Yeah, I guess. Obviously I loathe Trump, but like he's going after these elections. This election was rigged against me when Republicans won all of the state elections in a state. You know what I mean? Like, dude, get over it. People don't like you. They want a Republican governor in your state, but they voted against you as president. Like he can't. Like that election's illegitimate.
Did you see this? I don't know if you followed the election results at all for mayor in California, and basically, there was like the Democrat running at the top of the ticket, and then there was a Republican, and then there was another Democrat in third place. And like, they counted all the regular ballots, and I forget where it shook out. I forget if the Republican was close or maybe a little above. It was something like that. And then they started counting these mail-in ballots. And like the proportion of votes that had come in, like the majority were for the top Democrat and then some for the Republican, and hardly any, like a really small percentage for that third candidate. Well, then when they brought in all these mail-in ballots, they were like majority for this third candidate, that in the representative sample of everything else was like a small fraction. And yeah, maybe everything's on the up and up, but that doesn't pass the sniff test. And when you don't have any ID requirements, and you can, I don't know, it seems very fishy. A Republican wasn't going to win that election. I don't care about the Republican versus the Democrat. But when you see wildly different results from a mail-in ballot from the other ballots, that just doesn't pass the smell test.
I don't know anything about it, but I mean, don't you think some candidates appeal to different demographics differently? Like, you see this all the time when they're calling election results that, that hypothetically urban voters are likelier to use mail-in than rural, and that candidate appealed more to the urban voter. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's not inherently crazy, that you'd have preferential ballots for one candidate through one method of voting.
It just seems like your perspective might be different if the shoe was on the other foot, and you might be more suspicious of votes. But then it's like, then if you do that, well, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, okay, how about passing some rules that we all agree should be passed, and then everybody gets up in arms about that? I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, I could get behind a national ID law, the show a passport to register. I think that's designed to quell. I don't think that. I think that's fixing a problem that's not a big problem, and it's designed to preferentially make it harder for people that have lower income.
Well, I mean, it's also it's more aimed at ensuring that it's citizens that are doing the voting. But I think you're okay with non-citizen voting.
No, I don't think I ever said that.
Oh, I thought you did. Okay.
No, I don't think non-citizens ought to get to vote.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying that if you had a valid registration somewhere else, that ought to be good enough to register to a vote, rather than having to show your papers.
Yeah.
If you are an immigrant, to show that you have proof of your immigrant status, like, I don't think that's necessarily bad, but the number of people that have, I don't know, I don't have my birth certificate handy. I do have my passport, but my passport cost me a fortune every time I renew it. I don't know.
Well, it does if you wait till the last minute.
As I said.
Exactly.
No, I think it's crazy for Democrats to pick the voter ID at the poll as a place to die on the Hill. At the same time, I don't know. I just thought it was so hypocritical that we're opposed to mail-in voting when it might be young people with jobs who can't get away to vote on election day, but mail-in voting for old crotchety Republican people, well, that's just the way it's got to be. Like, I don't know. I think that a single mom working two jobs on election day, I think she ought to be entitled to vote by mail. And I'm picking an extreme example, but I think that's certainly as compelling as, Fred and Ethel don't want to drive after 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't disagree too much there. I just think there needs to be controls. I mean, the problem with mail-in voting is, it has the potential for abuse if multiple ballots are getting mailed to places. I mean, if it's under control, there's a way to ensure it's one ballot per person. That's one thing.
Well, they do check ballots against the voter rolls. I mean, that's part of what you do with mail-in ballots, that there's an outer envelope that's got the name of the person and you check it off the voter rolls. I was the precinct sheriff for election in Indiana before we moved out west, which was pretty interesting. It's very structured. There's a majority of the positions are picked by the ruling party. At that time, I was a member of the other party. But there's the person that's the head of the thing, not sheriff, judge. I can't remember what. Yeah, I think I was precinct judge was my title. And then there's like 3 statutory positions of people on both sides that watch the whole thing, and you've got very specific jobs to fulfill.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's as long as the voter rolls are kept accurate.
Yeah.
But if you can, it gets back to the same point. If you can register without proving you're a citizen or without identification, then that creates openings for issues.
Yeah.
Which again, it's like, if you really want to shut people up about illegitimate president, Trump's an illegitimate president, Biden's an illegitimate president, more voter security seems like it's something both sides could get behind.
As long as it's not suppressive of voters, as long as it doesn't disenfranchise people, I'm with you.
Well, but that's the argument for not showing an ID, and so it's like it's like any other political issue, I guess. It's got to be something palatable by both sides, but I feel like both sides use it to their advantage.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I'm not opposed to ID and common sense measures, but if you're going to do something that's going to require people to have a document, maybe the document should be free. Right, if you've got to have a birth certificate, maybe they ought to make states send you a copy of your birth certificate for free.
Yeah.
But
then what if you get a fraudulent birth certificate? What if you're born in Kenya?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I don't think we're that far apart. I think it's just I think the Democrats are opposing the voter fraud provisions because they don't like how Trump handled the 2020 election. And so it's like it has his stink on it. So they're never going to support it, even though they probably, like the bulk of people, agree with the provisions, So
for what it's worth, I think our polarization makes election fraud like 1,000 times less significant. I don't know if it makes it less likely, but it makes it less significant. Trump wasn't going to win Iowa City anyway. There's no cheating in the world that's going to get get him more than 20% of the votes here. And so,
honestly, I think you could make the case that voter fraud's a bigger deal in smaller elections. When you're dealing with, millions of people, like you said, it's probably less of a impact. But if you're dealing in where, a couple dozen votes makes a difference, I mean, votes for school board are probably more impacted than the big elections,
Exactly. Well, it's late there. We should probably wrap. Yeah, as always, grateful to our listeners. We really enjoy. I know we've picked up a few new listeners lately, and
Yeah.
we're especially glad to have you. We've got a show notes page, and it's got a comments box, questions. We'd really love to hear from people. Hey, thanks for joining us on this episode of Bourbon and Rum Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us keep the good spirits flowing.
And we invite you to join this conversation. Follow us on our Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear.
And until next time, cheers.